What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Universal Mastery. Welcome back to my public YouTube channel. I have a very important topic that we're going to be talking about in today's video, and it's very deep. All right, so this could be a little bit emotional. So if you start feeling some deeper emotions that come to the surface, give yourself time to process those and acknowledge those, or at least be aware of those. Because this subject is something that a lot of us have experienced, and it plays a very significant role in the trajectory of our life. So I'm going to be speaking about the trauma of going through separation. When I say separation, what I'm primarily referring to here is two parents that are separating from each other. So in other words, this is called divorce. So if you're someone that has been in a family that went through separation or went through divorce, then in this video, I'm really going to be breaking down the trauma that is behind that, the true emotional feelings that really are behind that. And I'm going to be diving deep into that so that we can actually understand what really took place, so we can really take a nice reflection within our own life and say, you know what? Was this something that was actually serious, or is this something that I need to just kind of like pretend isn't that serious and everyone goes through it, so it's not that big of a deal and I just move on with my life? If this is a video that you feel is going to be valuable for you, then definitely I consider staying tuned. All right, let me first start with introducing myself just so that you know who I am before we start this video. My name is Jeremiah Schwartz. I'm a professional occultist. I'm fully initiated in the entire Kabbalistic tree. I'm studied when it comes to the 22 major arcana of the tarot deck. I'm studied when it comes to planetary energies in association with astrology. And I'm also studied when it comes to trauma and the nervous system, especially how trauma affects the nervous system. So with that, let's go into the subject at hand. So we're talking about separation and divorce. There are a lot of us that have been through this experience and have sort of, in a way, had to take on a mental belief system that the separation wasn't that serious. Sort of in a way where we look back at it and we say, you know what, well, everyone these days goes through divorce. Everyone gets separated. It's not that big of a deal. It can't be that traumatic. You know, obviously it's unfortunate, or maybe your experience is unique and maybe the divorce or the separation was a good thing for you because maybe it changed the family dynamic to the point where there wasn't as much chaos. So the point that I'm trying to create here is that most of us act like this isn't a big deal. Most of us just say, all right, it is what it is. You know, we move on with our life and then we continue on. So the truth, though, is that the family is sacred. The mother and the father are sacred figures in anyone's life, especially in a child's life. We all need to have a integrated self-development from a young age to an older age. We need to have the mother and the father in our life. They play very significant roles. The mother is the nurturer, the one who teaches the child how to regulate the nervous system by feeling the emotions. The father is the protector, the one who creates a safe space so that that feminine work can be done in the first place. When these two figures come together and they work together and they raise a child or they raise multiple children, this sets the stage for those children or that child to have an integrated psyche and an integrated energy field. This sets the stage for that child to have a lot more confidence within themselves, but most importantly, it sets the stage for them to actually love themselves because they're being loved by their mother and their father. And this, once again, a child that is raised in this type of environment tends to go on in life and live out their purpose and do it in a way where it's just very authentic self-expression. But the reality is most of us have not experienced this family dynamic. Like literally most of us on the planet have not experienced this. And there are many reasons as to why this is, but the point is that it is. And most of us have family dynamics where the parents, sometimes the mother is taking on the masculine energy, sometimes the father's in the feminine, and there's like a little bit of a confusion there. Sometimes the parents are arguing with each other all the time. There's like tons of disagreement. Sometimes there's just a lack of love from the parents to the child, just because the parents aren't present or they weren't loved when they were children, so they're just projecting the same thing onto their child, right? So there's a ton of different dynamics that can take place that are unintegrated dynamics or dysregulated family dynamics. And unfortunately, this is what most of us experience with our families. Not all of us, but most of us. And the family is always going to be the foundation. It's always going to be what we consider in the back of our psyche, in the back of our consciousness, our safety net. So even if we have a dysregulated family where there's tons of chaos and tons of craziness, we're still going to identify certain areas of this family dynamic that seem familiar to us, and we're going to create safety spaces within it. So we're going to find spaces of safety within our own consciousness that we're finding also within our family dynamic. So sometimes this manifests as us having to kind of play a role within the family to create that safety. Sometimes the family, even though there's a lot of dysregulation, maybe there's like down times where it's like, okay, we have dinner together at least, or we go to the movies every Saturday night, or, you know, we go for a walk at the park, or we play family games every Saturday, right? These little things create safety spaces within our consciousness, which give us a sense of feeling like I'm a part of a family and I have love within this family, even if there is dysregulation. So this is a foundation, and ultimately it's, you know, with a dysregulated family, it's a weak foundation, but it's still a foundation, and there's still safety within that foundation. Now, once again, if our parents are actually present with us and they know how to love us and they know how to, you know, the father knows how to create the protection and he knows how to create that space and create that basically like that masculine order or that masculine structure within the family dynamic, whereas the mother is nurturing and she's caring and she's loving and she's demonstrating her connection to her own nervous system and her emotions. When we have parents that are like this in our life and they are spending their time and energy giving their love to us as the child, this gives us a massive amount of safety. This gives us like a very, very strong foundation within our consciousness that also permeates through the unconscious planes. So what this means is like we carry ourselves in everyday life with this feeling of, I have a safety net. If this doesn't work out, if that doesn't work out, if this doesn't work out, I have a family that loves me. And that there's an energy behind that that makes you push farther, that literally makes you more powerful. So as you can see, the healthy regulated family creates a very strong foundation, whereas the dysregulated family still creates a foundation for the most part, still creates some safety for the most part, but it's a weaker foundation. But regardless, the family still has the foundation. The family is the foundation. So what happens when our families not only become dysregulated, but then separates? This becomes something that, as I said from the beginning of this video, is overlooked and played down just because of how common it is today with most families, how many divorces there actually are and how many separations there actually are. But the reality is that when the parents are separating, there's a deep visceral and spiritual thing that is happening here. Not just a physical, psychological thing, which is also happening, but a spiritual thing. Remember, the mother is the representation of the feminine, and the father is the representation of the masculine. And when those parents that came together to create you separate, that is naturally going to spiritually affect you within that feminine and that masculine energy within yourself. So there is also a separation that is going to inherently start to take place between your own feminine and your own masculine. Masculine being more associated with the mind, feminine being more associated with the emotions. All right? So with that being said, not only is there the psychological component, the emotional, the mental, and the physical component of the separation that leaves a lot of trauma, but there's also a spiritual component to it as well, a purely energetic component. And on the surface, it can seem like it's not that big of a deal, but ultimately, what's happening is the foundation and the security net that is underlying the family is now being ripped away from the child or being ripped away from the children that are in the family. And this is something that we don't really understand when it's happening. So we have to kind of like bottle it up, and we have to sort of find a way to survive that experience. And that's where the trauma starts. But really, this is like one of the main things I want to drill in right now for you as a listener. This rips away the foundation that you previously had. That safety net or that security within the family that was deep within your unconscious and made you feel like, okay, at least I have a family, or at least I have this safety net at home, or at least I have a place to go back to when things get too crazy. That completely gets ripped away when parents divorce each other or when parents separate. Now, there are healthy ways to go through separation where both parents communicate it to the child and communicate it in a way where the child understands that this is for the best and this is something that is not going to affect the way that the parents love the child. So they're still going to work together to love the child the same way. They're just not going to do it together anymore. All right? So there is a healthy way to go through separation, but the reality is most separations that happen in our today's time do not happen in that way. And speaking from personal experience, when my parents separated, it was very traumatic. It was traumatic to the point where, my mom left and she had to go live somewhere else. And she actually had to live in a place that the people got evicted. The last people that lived there got evicted, and she didn't have it that much money because she was living with my dad at the time as a stay-at-home mom. And she had to live in this like basically run-down apartment because it was cheaper. And I remember when they separated, or when my mom told me that they were separating, she left my dad without him knowing. So like, he was not expecting it to happen the way that it did, and he didn't know the time when it was going to happen. It wasn't like we're coming together, we're setting a date. It was like, she's gone, and not only was it so sudden, but she was afraid that he was dangerous. So I got brought into the mix, and I was taken with my mom. She took me with her, and I had to live in this rundown, evicted apartment where there's holes in the walls, there's broken doorknobs, like everything was disgusting. And we had to live there. And I went from pretty much living in a really nice house, having a family. It wasn't the perfect family, but it was a family still. And in the matter of 24 hours, my entire foundation, or the security that I once had growing up, was completely gone. And now I'm living in this broken down apartment. And my mom is basically telling me that my dad is dangerous and that he can't know where we're staying. So this happened basically when I was 14 years old, and this was immensely traumatic for me. But at the time, I couldn't have really told it to you because I was in such shock that I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know what to say. I was scared, and I just had to become something to survive this experience. So I had to start separating from what I was truly feeling to be able to fight through that experience, fight through my sadness, fight through my pain, fight through my anger. And, that ended up playing out the way that it did. And then eventually they simmered down a bit. My mom and my dad simmered down a bit. So it wasn't like, she didn't think he was dangerous anymore, and I didn't have to like stay away from him. So then I started being able to go back to his place, and I was just at a hurt space in my life. It was tough. And my mom, she was hurt too, because it's obviously traumatic for her and it's traumatic for my dad as well. Like, everyone was hurt in this experience. But I'm the child, right? So I'm the one that they both brought into this experience. And, what I went through, I didn't deserve that. And I'm aware enough to know that this is not something that I deserved. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, you can kind of do some self-reflection with your own journey with separation or your parents separating, and realize that you didn't deserve to be traumatized in that way. Okay? Everything happens for a reason. I understand the spiritual components. Like, if it didn't happen the way it did, then you wouldn't be who you are now. But truthfully, when we get into that present moment with the true self, you didn't deserve that. And there's a lot of sadness, anger, and fear that is probably still attached to that separation. So that's what I realized within myself. But I remember, like, I would go back to my dad's, and he wasn't even there for me because he was so, he was traumatized in his own way. And he wasn't there for me. He wasn't able to educate me and tell me, like, what's going on and why they separated. And he went right into creating a new family. Like, almost like months later, he went into like creating a whole nother family. And that, in a deep way, made me feel like he didn't love me anymore and he was leaving me behind. And then my mom, she started using alcohol as her escape mechanism because she was so traumatized with the whole experience. And I felt like I didn't even have a mom anymore. She was like drunk almost every single night for a period of my life. She's not like that anymore by any means. She healed from that. But, it was really traumatic at this point in my life. This is like when I was 14 years old, all the way up until I was basically like 21. And, everything changed for me in like the matter of 24 hours. And it all started from this separation. And I played it off. Right? As I said, I became something else to survive that trauma. And this went on until I was literally the age of basically, I want to say 24. I think 24 was the age where I finally stepped into my true self. This was 2020. So I think I was 24 at that time. So a long time, from 14 to 24, I completely separated myself and then refound myself or reintegrated my true self when I was 24. And it was not easy. All right. But with that being said, I played it off when it happened. And I actually observed some of my behaviors and how some of the things changed when the separation actually happened. So at the age of like 25, 26, so this is recent, is when I started to become really aware of these past traumas and how much they could have potentially affected me. So I started doing some observation over my life experience, and I realized so much changed when my parents separated. And I didn't even notice that that was such a big deal. In my mind at the time, it was like, oh, they separated. Most parents do. It is what it is. I just have to be strong and get through it. But when I really take a look back and I observe, I changed drastically as a person. And my expression and the relationships that I created in my life changed drastically ever since that separation, which shows the deep emotional mark that it actually left on my nervous system and within my body. All right. So I look back, and some of the things that I noticed started changing is one of my ways of healthy coping when I was in the family before my parents separated. We were in towards the end of my parents' relationship. It was very dysregulated. So I had to find ways to cope. Like, I had to find ways to get through that. But generally, because I still had the foundation of the family and still that safety within the family, I relied on healthy coping mechanisms. So I started working out a lot. The gym became like my go-to. This is like the thing that I would do to feel better and to kind of get away from all the chaos within the home, if it was there. So the gym was something I was really big on, and then it became shoes, like collecting shoes. It was like something that I really started to pick up on, especially when I got into middle school and then high school. I just picked up a passion for that. And this is another healthy form of coping. And then it became hanging out with funny people. So I just had this like strong urge to find people that were funny. Like it was like the class clowns. And I would gravitate towards these kids because there was just so much anger, so much sadness and fear inside of me, in my nervous system that was repressed from the separation, that I really sought after these kids to basically distract me with their jokes and with just the way they were and in the exuberant expression that they had. And I became one of them. I became one of the funny people. So I started expressing myself like just being this funny person, but really it was all rooted in a space of being hurt. So I became overly funny in many ways, where I was like crossing boundaries with certain people. I was a little bit, you could even say, disrespectful with the way that I was funny. And in some ways that got me in trouble. But in other ways, that is how I was coping. And that was how I was expressing some of these repressed emotions. And that is truly, it is a healthy form of expression. But then I eventually attracted someone into my life who was a funny person. They were a class clown, and they were, really cool, like really just very attractive type of personality, like just easy to connect with, funny, all that stuff. And this person came into my life. This is around the age of, I want to say, so the separation happened at 14 for me. This person came into my life at probably the age of 16 or 17. So this is like 2 years after my parents separating. I was working out really hard. The gym became like my biggest coping. Then collecting shoes, really, really hard. And then hanging out with funny people. Now I'm like 16, 17 years old. I attract this funny guy into my life because I just entered into high school at this time. And this person, so I probably attracted them into my life when I was actually probably 15 or 14, because I met them when I first got into high school. And I believe that I was 14 or 15 years old at that point. But they actually introduced me to substances, specifically marijuana, when I was about 16 or 17 years old. And this took me from a path of having my healthy forms of coping, like going to the gym, collecting my shoes, hanging out with funny people, and it completely shifted everything, where I started to get addicted to smoking weed and letting go of these healthy forms of coping. So as I started to smoke weed, which is no longer a healthy form of coping, which is an unhealthy form of coping, because it's disassociating me from my actual body. So I'm actually no longer feeling those repressed emotions anymore. So the more I'm smoking, the more I'm not feeling. The more I'm not feeling, the more those emotions are actually controlling me on an unconscious level. And this process started when I was like 16 years old. And with that being said, though, I was at a space where all the healthy ways of me coping originally were starting to dissipate. And I started creating like more unhealthy patterns of coping, which went from smoking weed to drinking alcohol to eventually taking pills, hanging out with people that didn't actually care about who I was, hanging out with people that did not love me, did not have good intentions, to the point where I would hang out with people that some people actively stole from me. I hung out with, at times, dangerous people that were like carrying guns on them, people that were trying to rob other people. And it was just really unhealthy, but that's what I was attracting because I was so hurt, and I was trying to escape my emotions to the point where I was self-sabotaging to a really strong degree. And I want you to keep in mind, this all happened after my parents separated. And even before that, the big separation, I was in a relationship with a girl in high school, and me and her had a generally healthy relationship. I mean, we were young, so obviously it wasn't perfect, but this relationship was like my first long-term relationship. This was a 3-year relationship at a young age. And I felt like I had a pretty good connection with her. And I remember that, as my parents separated, then like all the craziness took place. That's around the time when my relationship with this girl that I was in a relationship with for 3 years started to really diminish. Like, I wasn't resonating anymore with the relationship, because what originally attracted me to that relationship was me basically being hurt, but finding healthy ways to cope through that pain. And I was fighting through that. And I had attracted this partner into my life who actually played a very significant and a healthy role for my self-development. But then as I started to gravitate more towards the smoking weed, more towards the other unhealthy relationships, more towards all these other not so great things, that's when me and the relationship with this girl started to separate. And I ended up breaking up with her at one point. And I didn't really think that I would, while I was in the relationship. Like, I didn't see a reason to ever do that. But it got to that point, and I broke up with her, and it devastated her. It traumatized her because she didn't expect it. And it was quite traumatizing for me, because I think a deep portion of me as well didn't even want to do it. But I was just so hurt and going down the wrong path that that's the only thing that I could actually see at that time. And this is another thing that I really saw when I go back in my past that started after my parents separated. My foundation was ripped away. I don't have a sense of safety within my conscious anymore, or within my unconscious anymore. And now I'm starting to shift my life in ways that are generating more unsafety. So my relationship was actually one of those safety nets. Funny enough, it was like a foundation for myself. And once again, because I started gravitating towards these unhealthy coping mechanisms, because I was so hurt from the separation of my parents, it eventually separated my relationship. So it all comes back to that deep occult principle: as within, as without. When you have repressed emotions that are going on that are really intense, and you're not allowing yourself to process them, and you're not putting yourself in the right position to feel them, it will come out to the surface and it will project itself externally. So I had a lot of that, and I was hurting myself because I was not feeling it, and it just led me down a deeper path of hurting myself, where I actually separated from the relationship that was probably one of the only things that was keeping me afloat, if I'm being honest. And from that point, my life got way worse. That's when I started getting into pills. That's when I started stealing and robbing myself. I got arrested multiple times. I started selling drugs. It was just a bad path, really bad path. I don't even know, to be honest with you. It's wild that I'm here right now, that I'm alive. I went through things that, based on what I went through, I shouldn't be here. And part of going through a lot of those near-death experiences showed me how much I'm actually supposed to be here. Like, I'm here for a reason. There's something out there that allowed me to live through those experiences. So that's why I'm here in this moment. But, I do look back at all of this, and I can literally trace it all the way back to the separation of my parents, as crazy as it sounds. And I noticed that all the relationships that I got into after my parents separated are all the same. And when I say the same, I'm referring to the same underlying energy. There's a similar archetypal pattern that I keep seeing remanifest within itself, which is I keep finding these partners that I feel like I have to save, because I'm seeing my inner child within that partner. And they happen to be in similar types of dynamics where their parents are separated and they're having a hard time finding their self within their family. So it's like my partner's foundation is ripped away from them, and I'm seeking them to save them because I'm seeing my inner child inside of them. But inherently, what this means is that I'm attracting a partner that is not self-sufficient, doesn't truly love themselves, and I don't love myself enough to even realize it. So I keep manifesting partners that are not self-sufficient, where I have to literally be the guide. I have to literally save them. And that requires a lot of vitality. It requires a lot of energy. And it is coming from a space of me not being able to love myself. And those types of relationships, partnerships, never work out. They always end in resentment. So when I look back at all the relationships that I've had since the separation of my parents, they were all similar in nature, where I was saving my partner, trying to guide them into their highest potential, because I was really just saving the inner child that I saw within them that made me think about my inner child. I was like projecting externally the love that I really was trying to cultivate for myself. And that led me into these relationships that were bound to never work out. And that caused a lot of pain, and that caused a lot of trauma as well, because I didn't understand it. But the reason why I'm sharing this and I'm being personal with this is because this is very real. And I'm not the only person that has experienced this. I know this for a fact. And as I share this as open as I can, I know that's how this information and how this energy of the message is really going to get across. That's why I'm very open with what I talk about. I don't really care about sharing my personal experience. I'm in the game of expressing what's actually happening, being honest. Because if we're going to play if we're going to play a game and we're going to jump around, some honest truths and we're not going to be authentic, then we're not going to get anywhere. So that's what I'm all about. And it's gotten me very far in life, and it helps me to better know myself. So that's why I'm doing it. But this is what happened. And I do trace all of it back to the parent separation. And I never considered it. So when I was in all those different relationships, I had no idea it was connected to my parents separating. And only until the age of 25, which is 2 years ago, is when I started to first recognize some of these things. And as I started to become aware of these things, it was really blowing my mind. And it wasn't easy by any means to go through that emotional healing to actually dive back into those repressed emotions from my parents' separation, because they were in me all the way up until this point. And literally that's what my entire true self-integration really revolved around very significantly, was going into those repressed emotions from my parents separating, because that's how traumatic it was. And, I'm still in the process of doing this. These emotions run really deep, and I'm still uncovering these things. I'm still integrating these things, but I've already integrated a lot of them, and I've created a brand new foundation within myself and within my life where I'm regenerating these healthy coping mechanisms, even some of the ones that I used to have before my parents separated. I brought up a newfound joy of collecting shoes when I ended up letting go of that joy when I started getting into drug use. So I had all the shoes back in high school, and then I got into drugs heavy, and I sold all my shoes so I could buy drugs. And now I have a newfound joy for collecting shoes, which I hadn't had in years. All right, so this is showing that I'm getting back into these roots, and I'm bringing this true self or this inner child back into my body, and I'm healing it. So I'm creating these healthy coping mechanisms, and a lot of this is natural. It's not like I'm logically thinking this out. This is very natural. And I'm going to the gym again, and I'm going, I do intuitive working out, which is a whole thing within itself, but I go to the gym again, right? I'm starting to get involved with different communities, like the local spiritual community around here, or a local group of people that go for runs outside, little things like that. I'm starting to see the importance of being around other people, just in general, but more so other people that are working on themselves and are also healthy, at least trying to live a healthy lifestyle. So all these things are taking place while I'm removing the unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I'm not perfect. I don't think any of us are perfect. Actually, let me say, I know that none of us are perfect. And we all have little unhealthy coping mechanisms to an extent. But some of us have really significant unhealthy coping mechanisms that are really preventing us from being our true self and doing that deeper integration. And for those things that are in my life, those really significant ones, like substance abuse, I haven't done that in literally 3 years. I haven't touched a drug, or I haven't touched a substance. I haven't even drank coffee in basically what feels like 3 years. Okay? And not just what feels like literally is 3 years, maybe a little bit longer. And with that being said, it's like I'm creating a brand new foundation and a brand new safety within myself. Like, I have my own home now, and I own this, and this is my foundation. This is what I get to create for myself. This is like my own safety. So if there's going to be any dysregulation, it's going to be by my doing. And I have the ability to say, is this something that I want? Or is this something that I don't want? What feels right for me? And clearly, based on what I've been through, I don't want dysregulation in my household. And I'm very conscious that if I was to bring a child into existence, I don't want them to be dysregulated. I don't want them to come into a life where I'm with a partner that I don't truly love. And if my partner doesn't truly love me, because I know that that's going to traumatize my child. And trust me, I am in the business of not setting up that generational karma. I do not want that. I wouldn't want it for myself. I'm not going to do it to my child. I'm going to make sure my child comes into this existence with as much support, as much love, and as much safety as they possibly can. And I'm not saying that, I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I'm going to have the perfect partner or whatever, but I'm going to make sure that those things are in place. Even if the relationship doesn't work out the way that I think it does, they're going to have two parents that love them to death. And these are things that I get to think about because, I'm an adult now and I'm creating my own foundation. And if I bring a partner into my life, then I get to choose based on what feels right for me. Does this person love me? Because I love myself. Because if I'm creating this safety within myself, if I'm creating this internal foundation, then that means my partner is going to have that same foundation, a similar type of foundation, and a similar sense of safety. And if they have that, then that inherently means they have the capacity to actually love. And that's what I want. I want a partner that has the capacity to love me, and I want to have the capacity to love my partner. So that I know if I ever went through something where I need real love in my life, it's there. And if I go through something and there's not real love in my life and I'm with a partner, then that shows me clear signs. I don't love myself. Why am I with this person? Why did I get into a relationship where this person doesn't truly love me and can't help me through, a challenging situation? And that was a similar dynamic that I just actually found myself in this previous relationship that I was in. And it was really after this recent relationship where the floodgates of understanding the trauma really came to the front door for me. And I started unpacking a lot of that and going into that deep regulation and integration. But I was in that position where it's like, I didn't feel like I was getting the love that I needed. And I had to reflect and say, where am I not loving myself? This is not something that is her fault. This is something I take responsibility. So this is like, what am I doing? Where am I missing the mark? And once again, that relationship ended, and now I'm in a completely different environment with a lot of awareness and am in the process of creating this foundation and creating the safety nets. And it really is a beautiful thing, and it's so important to have for anyone. But it wasn't easy to go from that separation from when I was like 14 years old to where I am now. I went through unimaginable amounts of pain and suffering to get here. But I am here, and I didn't go through what I went through for no reason, which is why I'm a teacher, and I share this information publicly. And it changes a lot of people's lives. All right? But I'm in a beautiful position to be able to help others create a foundation and to create the safety, which is just not only just important in life. As you can imagine, having a foundation is just like anything can be built on top of a foundation. But just how intricately this also comes together with deeper levels of spiritual self-development. Like when we start doing deeper spiritual self-development, we are inherently starting to dive into some of our repressed emotions, because self-development is about integrating the true self. So that foundation that I had to find, I had to cultivate, and that I have to continuously create is something that we all need and becomes the starting point or the building blocks for everything else we experience in life. And I see why I went through the unique experience that I did, but I feel like I'm in a space for like the first time in many years where I'm creating new patterns. I'm creating new life experiences that I've never seen before. That's like the best way to put it. It's like I'm not stuck in those same negative cycles that kept me stagnant for so long. I'm starting to see new things. I'm starting to experience new things. And this brings a sense of adventure to life, which feels really good. And it's an amazing thing. But in order to really do this, or the way that I really tapped into this, is I had to really start coming to terms with these repressed emotions that are in my body and realize like a lot of that was connected to my parents separating. So that's the reason why I made this video, to show the significance of the separation and the trauma. Don't take it for granted. Look over your life experience and ask yourself, did things shift when your parents separated? Don't try to be mentally strong. Don't try to override it. Don't try to play it off like everyone goes through this. It's not that big of a deal. Look, if that's what you want to do, then by all means, go ahead and do that. But really, there are some deep underlying emotional roots here. And as a child, this is always going to be traumatic. So acknowledge that and allow yourself to start feeling into some of those potentially repressed emotions that you might have. This would be in your best interest so that you can start processing what actually happened, so that you can start loving yourself again for the first time in a long time. All right? If you need help doing this, if you want to work with someone, because this is intimate work, this is deep work. If you want to work with somebody who's gone through this process within themselves and had to really learn a lot of these things, truly in a hard way, but now has wisdom to bring structure to this process, definitely consider working with me. I would definitely look into booking a mentorship with me, which is at the second link in my YouTube description. If this is something you're feeling called towards, definitely consider it. We can start unpacking some of these emotional roots, but most importantly, we can start cultivating this foundation and this safety net that you need in your life. All right, second link below. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I definitely shared enough. I really do appreciate all of you for being here and really absorbing this content. You know, if you made it this far and you're tuned in, you're about your spiritual self-development. You're really taking it seriously. You're setting that intention. You're setting that I'm trying to connect to the all intention. You're setting that I'm trying to know who I truly am intention. And that's not easy. And this type of information with the energy that's behind it really does cause shifts in people's lives that are not always the most comfortable shifts. So if you're here, I appreciate you being here and taking your self-development to that deeper degree. So thank you. If you enjoyed this content, come down here, hit the thumbs up button. If you want me to share some more, personal information like this, sharing my own experience and things of that nature and touching on these subjects, hit that thumbs up. Let me know. Also, drop down in the comments section and let me know how this influenced you. Let me know if you want to hear more of this type of content. Let me know if this happened to you. I want to hear your own experience, and I will read the comments. I really do. I don't respond to all of them, but I give them a like and a heart. All right, so I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. So go ahead and do that. Now, also make sure you hit the notification bell to get notified whenever I post. You don't want to miss out. Come down here and hit the subscribe button, because when you subscribe, you are further linking into the content, and there really is an energetic component behind that. You can further link in. All right. Now, I want to say this. I'm going to take your awareness to literally the most important link within the entire YouTube description itself. This is the first link in the YouTube description. This is the Patreon, okay? On the Patreon, I have tons of content that goes into all different types of things like occult education and nervous system regulation, emotional healing. things in that nature. I talk about a lot of things and I explain a lot of things that you are not going to hear anywhere else. A lot of this is coming from my unique life experience, and that's what I offer to the Patreons that invest in themselves. I also have practices on the Patreon that you're not getting on my YouTube channel. Matter of fact, none of that content on my Patreon is on the public YouTube channel, and it's more advanced and more personal. So what that means is that if you've been binge watching my channel, you've been gaining a lot of value from it, it's been shifting your perspective, you need to be on the Patreon. Okay, that's almost like a guarantee. Like, you will get value from the Patreon. I would look into it. Tier number 3 of the Patreon is the Vampire Ritual. This is performed on the 29th of every month. It's designed to completely shift your energy field to be more magnetic in nature, so you can start that process of claiming your power back and loving yourself more. It starts to make you a lot more receptive to your unconscious, subconscious mind, which also sets the stage to start pulling out negative repressed emotions with the willingness and the knowing to start feeling them, to process them into positive emotions. This also is a great place to start undoing religious trauma or religious programming, where you stop seeing the world in such a dualistic way, good and evil, and you start seeing darker symbolism from dark energy and chaos in the environments, and you can naturally see it for what it actually is, which is power and potential. You can transmute that through observation, turn it into your own power and evolutionary potential. So this is all accessible to tier number 3. Now also, you get your personal information, your picture, full name, birth location, and your current living location, state. You get all that intimate information placed in the advanced crystal grid that I have right over here. And this crystal grid is designed to protect the body from EMF frequencies, inorganic energies. So what it really does is it wakes up certain cellular structures to help balance out some of those potentially harmful radio waves so that they don't affect you in a negative way. And it also sets the stage for true self-integration. It's highly charged in a feminine way. So the grid itself is in the shape of an upside down triangle, which is the feminine symbol of the universe. It's the womb, basically. And then there is a torus that is constantly pumping a torus field into the grid that is plugged in electronically, which projects certain frequencies based on the type of therapy that I'm using for that month. So if you want to be in this grid and have everything that this grid represents manifest within your physical body and around your energy field, definitely consider it. All of this is accessible to tier number 3 or tier number 4 of the Patreon. All right. Now, as I said, tier number 4 is the top tier. You get access to everything from the previous tiers, but you get some additional bonuses. You get psychic prediction on a monthly basis, and you have the ability to message me whenever you want on WhatsApp, and I respond through voice message. All right. So consider that. First link in the YouTube description. We'll leave it there. Now, I'm going to move into the second link below. You cannot miss it. In the second link below, you have an option to book a mentorship with me. This is going to be extremely foundational. If you watched this video today and it really resonated with you, and maybe you even got a little bit emotional as you started to kind of self-reflect, and you realize that you haven't really been able to re-establish a new foundation after your foundation was ripped away from you. If that's you, and you're trying to cultivate that foundation, and you're trying to recreate that safety, and you don't really know exactly how to do that yet, and you need someone to kind of guide you through that process, definitely take this as a sign from the universe. Take this as an opportunity to work with me, who's been through this process and can help you navigate. All right. Second link below is where you can book the mentorship. I have a 3-month mentorship, then I have a 6-week mentorship, and then I have a one-on-one call. So if you want to see what the mentorships are like and maybe know a little bit more about it, then definitely book a one-on-one call and we can go over that. Or simply maybe you just have some questions you want to run by me on the one-on-one call, we can go into that as well. All right, definitely look into it. All of that is in that second link below. I'm going to leave that there. Now, we're going to go into that same second link below. This is where you can literally purchase a very unique tarot card reading from me. So this is a tarot card reading that I promise you have never received before. And the reason why is because I understand the Kabbalistic tree way more than the average person. So what I can do is I can literally tell you what you're feeling, experiencing in the present moment, and then what you're going to be experiencing in the near future, as well as the long term, and show you the Kabbalistic placements that are also coming through the reading that are influencing some of those energies that you're experiencing. All right. In this reading, I'm also giving you a very raw and honest perspective of exactly what the card is trying to communicate. So I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm giving it to exactly how you're supposed to hear it. And for the readings, I also include oracle cards as well. So I use 3 intuitive oracle cards to give you a little brief message that adds on to the tarot card so you can better understand what's going on. All right. If this is something you want to take advantage of, consider it. Second link below. I've done well over 2,000 readings, been doing this for about 4 years. I get tons of valuable feedback. If you want to look into it, second link below. Once again, we'll leave it there. Now we're going to move into the third link below. This is where you can become a YouTube member. And as you're becoming a YouTube member, you are gaining access to a multitude of different benefits. But most importantly, you're getting access to what is called the Psychic Warfare Emoji Program. This is a sequence of emojis that I've designed myself that are based on real occult principles. And you can link in the name of a target, hit enter, and it actually causes psychic effects to the target of your choice. This is the most simple form of using psychic warfare through the internet platform, and it's also an amazing way to express healthy aggression. All right. This is something that there are over 2,000 posts where members have used this service, and there are members in this moment that are currently taking advantage of it. If this is something that you want to take advantage of for yourself, definitely look into it. It's that third link in this YouTube description. You click it, then you join at the top, and then you have access. All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate all of you very, very, very much. And I hope you do have an amazing rest of the night or day, wherever you are. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.